Hello, welcome to this live webinar for the Ruralization book.
Yes, hi.
Right. We are now going to discuss some findings you find, and we are giving up for questions by you. You can raise them also by the chat, which is Maarten monitoring, and we try to reflect on certain findings and also some assignments and some questions from you. One of the first questions, and what is quite overarching, is the question, what are the mechanisms to encourage local governments to change? How do you get them towards a rural development approach, to apply bottom-up strategies, to facilitate development of rural areas, and to create a supportive environment? The question is, of course, it's very difficult to say in your specific situation how you do so. We, however, have shown a report published also how you can do it, how local authorities can do it, and then you can address them. This is the way you can do it. And we said you can have three roles local authority can have: as landowner, as facilitator, and as regulator. As landowner, you can, of course, local government can invest in certain elements, can share the land, can manage the land on a certain way, and of course can make strategic decisions how to use the land, as you can see from this slide. Next slide, please. And as facilitator, that is something which also the local authority can do it. They can convey people. If the local authority asks to get people together, it's mostly being seriously than if someone else is doing it. Can intermediate between parties. They can raise awareness, and they can also provide data on all kinds of developments. Relevant is that this facilitator here is the role of local authorities, but also other people can facilitate those elements. Only local authorities are sometimes a better place, a neutral place to do so. Not always. It depends, of course, on your local context. And the last point is the regulator, which is, of course, an authority can do that. And they can make rules, they can draw that nobody else can do. Although also here, sometimes they can plan things, they can catalyze things, but also they can advocate for some regulation to other governments. So that if, for example, a regional or provincial national government say, you have to change the regulation, of course that someone else can do it as well. And of course, the administration of all kinds of regulation things, enforcing actions. It's also important that regulating role is more than setting a rule, but also taking action, communicative actions. And in this way, also local authorities, you can apply to local authorities to take actions, although, a good thing is, the answer is, what can I do? Then there's three roles you can find.
All right, then we had a maybe rather philosophical question on whether rural development is universally and absolutely a good thing or not, and if it's always appropriate to use it, or maybe it should be lower on the priority list, and then also who has to decide about that. So I'll try to unpack that. So rural development is probably not always the main priority, and it really depends on your situation whether it should be. If there is a pandemic going on in the world, or if there is a war in your country, then maybe the government will not focus on rural development as such. And it could also be that the policies they are pursuing are not helping rural development, but there are higher aims and more important things going on. So that really depends on your country or your region, maybe. In general, I'd say it is good to develop rural areas, and that is also true because there are multiple ways in which rural development can happen. So it can focus on economic development of an area, but it could also be on the ecological development, on protecting nature better, and in that sense, creating more natural capital in the area. So that this depends on your context, and I think therefore it's important you are all working on own areas that you think what is relevant in your context. So then in general, who should do that? Well, that's up to anyone. So if it's the government deciding it, I think it's likelier that they will choose for more active rural development strategies if rural voices are also heard in the central government or in the provincial government or in any territory you're talking about. So by participating and engaging, and that's also maybe what we try to do in ruralization, making these voices heard, it's likelier that the right track of rural development for that region will be chosen. In general, you can always, as an individual, as a company, or as an NGO, decide to go for rural development and focus on that, even if your government is not doing it, or if it's doing it in a way that you don't support. So if they are much more economic focused and you say, I want to focus on the ecological side, you can also do that, and then it's still developing a rural area. So it's not something that is just a government decision. It can be done by a lot of people and a lot of organizations, and then something happens in a rural area, hopefully a positive thing.
Another question was how transferable are the practice towards other contexts, and how can we apply our learnings to other rural areas? And we had in week 4, I think we had a presentation on it by Annika. We showed this resource wheel, which shows that, of course, and that's first of all to say that rural areas differ largely. That's why also we ask you to pick your own rural region to look what can apply for your rural region, because they are so different that we cannot say a practice find here can always be used there. Therefore, we also showed you a lot of practices that you can pick up and look what fits best to our region. And therefore, it's good to look at what are the resources in your region and look at the social, the human, the cultural, natural, the political, financial, the build capital. All of them interact. Where does certain things work very well? In certain cases, if you have problems, for example, political capital, you can less trust on governments to do something. And all the way around, also in the social capital, also financially. And that makes that certain solutions work better in one region than the other ones. And yeah, you know your own region best, and we don't know our regions in the world. So it's good to look for yourself what fits best, and based on that, look what kind of approach is necessary. And it's not so that you find somewhere a nice example that it can be applied everywhere. So this is what I said, I think. It was on different local situations. You must to and what is this ideas of newcomers? That's something else. Sometimes it's difficult. You can have tension between newcomers and existing stuff. That's quite common. So that is not a problem that per se is there, but it means quite often a tension between newcomers and people who are existing there, because there are different cultures and different ways. But that can also lead to novel, beautiful things. But that's not always goes smoothly.
Can I ask one practical question from the chat?
Yes,
I think it's a yes, but you asked, are these slides downloadable?
Yes, we can definitely put it in the course as well, along with the recording of the live session.
All right.
Yeah. And we've also looked back on the assignments, not only the 5th assignment, but all of the assignments that we've done thus far. And we noticed that it becomes a bit difficult to differentiate between the megatrends, trends, and weak signals, particularly between the megatrend and trend. So we wanted to clarify that a megatrend is an overarching mainstream that affects most regions and activities. So it's something that happens in most regions across the world. And a trend is a development that are effective in specific regions and activities. So it's something that happens maybe more specific to your country and others. And for a weak signal, it's symptoms of change in specific regions and activities. So they happen very, let's say, rarely across the globe. And we looked at this example. We will be going more depending on the region of the assignments. So this one is more focused on the Alpenedes in Spain, where one of the most pressing issue is about the increase of large-scale food production compared to the small-scale food production. And there are, of course, other weaknesses and strengths as well in this region, but this is the main focus of the assignments. And what we see is that the different megatrends and trends contribute to what this food production needs. So we have the sustainability transition and the food tourism and food sovereignty, which aims to promote local food production in the area. And looking at the access to land pathway, we have training, the partnership regime for retirees to manage the land, and a distribution channel and manufacturing of agricultural products. And together, all of these assignments and the learnings from these assignments lead to increasing food production in the area, which can be shown with the promising practice that you've chosen, which is the Lagatera Shared Agri-Food workshop, which brings together different people with their locally produced products, and strengthens the community in the area.
Another area highlighted was Quecchineca in Calabria, in Italy, where you see that there is a growth of sustainable tourism, a lot of activities to get sustainable tourism in the region. But at the other end, there was problems with population services, infrastructure, and rural activities, which were the issues there. And compare region with South Lakeland.
Yeah. Comparatively, there's also South Lakeland, where sustainable tourism is also on the rise, but has a similar problem when it comes to an aging population and accessibility to the rural area.
And if you compare this, you see that this Quecchineca area, the circular economy was there as a thing where the people were striving for issues of infrastructure, accessibility and connectedness, care services, and that the promising practices resulting in this was organizing cultural festival, because there was also language differences in there, and how you measured it and measure this new idea of sustainable tourism and sustainable being there for the people there, in which also cultural qualities and cultural diversity plays a role. And South Lakeland?
Yeah, very similar to Quecchineca. The most common trend there is remote working, which of course needs to be facilitated by the digital economy. They need facilities and amenities for a local broadband, for example, or internet connections. And all of this can also lead to community food creation, which is more focused towards socializing the land. So not only encouraging newcomers to come into the rural region, but also providing more services for the existing community. And another example we have is Zlatibor in Serbia, where the main strength is the natural capital, and very common to a lot of assignments also is the population decline. And for this case, the mega trend is really about aging population, and the main problem is that because there's no more younger population, the succession of the land does not occur very naturally. So the trend that could benefit this is rural business succession, which needs to be facilitated with care services as well. And so the promising practice here relates more to rural newcomers, or people coming in and doing more activities in the land.
Are there any more questions from your side? Because we presented some of the outcomes you have done. I thought even some of the case study presenters were over here. So do you have any questions? You can raise them in the chat, or you can raise them just by a microphone.
Yeah.
No questions.
Do you have anything?
Oh, I see a question. So far, so good, no questions. Okay, that's a good message. Yes, thank you. Okay, and then I think our last slide is what
Someone raised their hand.
someone raised their hand, please.
Please.
Go ahead.
Yes,
Hugh.
Hugh McDermott here. I'm doing this course in the interest of getting the information from it, and it's excellent information. My problem is that I'm trying to engender in rural people, because I live in a rural area, a greater interest in ruralization. The problem we have in Ireland is that we have a population of 5 million, and about 2 to 2.5 million of those live within a 50-mile radius of the capital, Dublin, which is on the east coast. Right through the years, businesses have been encouraged to go to Dublin. Dublin was seen as the place for people where, so more and more houses have been built in Dublin, and Dublin is getting completely clogged up. But nobody has taken a stance to say we should move people out of Dublin, and we should encourage businesses to locate in the western seaboard and in the Midlands and the south and the north of the country. So I am doing the course in order to get the information to try and begin to engender a movement out of Dublin of the population and be able to spread the population right throughout the country, because it's a small enough country with an even smaller population. And if I look at Singapore and places like that, which are very small countries with larger populations, I would like to think that we could organise our transport in Ireland and other services so that the population could be spread right throughout the country rather than in the capital in Dublin.
Thank you, Hugh. We have also some case studies in Ireland, and one of the cases was a Grow Remote. You know a little bit more about it, I think.
Yes. So it looked, for example, or other people in the project who were from the University of Galway, have looked at Grow Remote. That's an organization in Ireland that facilitates exactly what you were saying, so working remotely in smaller villages and towns further away from the capital. And I think they are also politically active, as in talking with the government, how to help people who want to work in these areas, how to make these areas welcoming people who come there to work remotely, and how to connect them, for instance, to organize services and so. And I'm thinking, we've also been in Galway last year, and I recognize your point also about transport, that is an issue in Ireland, I think. So
the big issue.
That's something to work in your final strategy on how that could improve.
Thank you for that. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, remarks? No?
No.
Then I will, I think we are going to on our last slide, isn't it? Because we have some room for final remarks. I mean, we are busy in closing it down. Will be not too long, that it takes time. So we expect you to hand in our last assignments. And I hope that's going well. I've seen that Martin says it well. And that's it. Do you have any contributions yourself? No?
Of course, looking at all of the assignments, it was very enriching for us as well to learn from different regions, and everyone's contribution was very well done. So it was a great run of the course. Yeah.
And thank you for this. And I hope I will see contributions on Sketch Drive. And hey, I see another one question from Hazeltine. I have a look at the chat. The best bid to apply for those investments. That's the question, because the project itself at a certain moment closes and the people are working themselves on different parts. So that's the problem with the work is, of course, something which you can do locally and you can connect with people,
right? And
that's possible, but it's not that there is a project always has an end, and at a certain moment, people move on to other projects, other messages, and many of us are still working on those topics. But that's always difficult to find where to find those channels to keep intact. That's always social media and all kinds of measures to look at, but that's always a question, and you can, that it's not a very, I don't have a definite answer which channel you should follow. Yeah. Sorry for that. Okay. Yeah.
If there are no more, then we will be closing the session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.